Hello and welcome to Super Rugby Aotearoa round 3 review. And these Sundays are always interesting for me, or fun, because I know this looks like a well-oiled ship, the way that we come through with all these shows. But on a Sunday, I basically send out the email to a number of guys, and then just see who turns up to come and talk about the games. So yes, it's always, you've sort of sat there going, is anyone going to turn up and who's going to turn up? Yes, so this evening we have at least 2 people joining me. We're going to go with Cornflake first. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Well-oiled machine, eh? I mean, looks good on the outside. We'll just run with that. Sounds great.
Absolutely. Yes, and Ashwin, how are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing fine. This is like, what do you mean you hope who turns up? You send out a sheet with all the shows and who has to turn up. And it's just like, I feel like I'm going to be sent to the principal's office if I don't.
Well, the Sunday one is much more of a kind of like, yes, I've just sent it to all 4 of you, all 3 of you, and see which ones turn up. And you 2 have turned up. And Stephen kind of tried to turn up, but is having technical difficulties. He'll maybe join us later.
Again.
We do need to buy him a laptop and get him on Fiverr, don't we, really? Let's be honest.
On Fiverr, we have to go to the supermarket and buy him a nice big bottle of Metamucil.
I have no idea what you're talking about. And considering our pre-show chat didn't involve talking about either of these games, involved talking about where to go buy towels and who owns what franchises. Really, good luck, folks. I hope you enjoy the show. I have no idea how it might come through. But anyway,
well-oiled machine. Well-oiled machine.
Exactly. So, Squeaky Wheel, you were at the Blues versus the Highlanders, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Thank you for getting in there, talking to some fans. You had chats with some Blues fans and some Highlanders fans pre-game to get their views on things. And I don't think it really turned out the way that either of them expected it to. It was a tight affair.
It was a tight affair, let's pull out all the cliches we can. Weather was a leveler, all that sort of thing. But actually, a game of 2 halves, the team with the least amount of mistakes, making hay. So, and that's basically how I felt the game actually transpired. I mean, the first half was the Highlanders making all the mistakes and basically giving the Blues opportunities. In the second half, the roles were reversed, and the Blues started making the mistakes, and the Highlanders took advantage of that. So that's what it felt like watching it. And yeah, I don't know how did it's a bit difficult when you got vested interest in it, isn't it, Cornflakes? And it's just like it's just like seeing the game as everybody else that's neutral seeing it. But that's the way I saw it.
Stephen, we need to get you a Highlanders flag so at least people know who it is you support. Because look, I've got the jersey behind me. Austin's got lots of Blues kind of flags and stuff, and wearing a Blues cap. But there you are in your All Blacks. Oh no, your Phoenix.
And a yellow Super Brew cap.
And the yellow Super Brew hat goes on. Yes, you did predict it. And what margin did you go for, sir?
I think I went by 8. Was the one I went for, so I was a little bit out in the margin. But I just on the note of Super Brew, I just would like to say, who is at the top of your Super Brew leaderboard currently at the end of round 3? Paul, are you aware of that?
I've not even looked, to be honest.
Yeah,
but I do know that you are 6 games from 6, whereas I'm 5 from 6, which means I'm probably behind you.
Yes, no, I'm loving life at the moment, nailing all of them. Margins are pretty close. I mean, yeah. I agree with what Ashton said. It was definitely a game not what was expected by at all. I think the first half was probably what a lot of people expected the whole match to be, but it turned out a lot different from that. I was surprised, especially in that second half, how much the Highlanders backline actually got up over the Blues backline. I thought there would be an area where the Blues would just dominate that whole matchup, but I thought the forwards would be quite an even battle, but I thought the backline is where the Blues would actually edge it, given Paul's atrocious weather in the preview last week. That didn't eventuate, but even still, having a good backline that can execute from the few chances that teams may have got, I thought could have been the big difference between the sides. But the Highlanders, I think, pulled out all the stops. They played really, really well. And considering they were playing with 14 men throughout the whole game, because Scott Gregory really wasn't there at all, they played really well.
He's an ex-Blues player.
Oh, makes sense now.
Yeah. I actually, the thing for me was that really the Blues came out in the second half and just weren't switched on. They made some real basic sort of errors that really helped the Highlanders to get at flow on. And I think all of the teams, I know the Crusaders are sort of like at the top of the pile of teams sort of thing, but reality is if the Crusaders aren't on their game, any team can tip any team over. So you can't give any team an opportunity, and that's what the Blues did in that second half. Get a bit of momentum up, get a bit of confidence up, and the Highlanders took it with two hands.
And it's amazing, isn't it, how the players who excelled in the first half, like your Caleb Clarkson, your players like that, or especially him, I think everyone's raving on how amazing he was. Where'd he go in the second half? Like, he was nowhere. He was nowhere at all, invisible. And I guess you say the Blues had hardly any ball. They were really shut out. But it's like those key guys, is it consistency or what it is? But they were there, they're impactful. A lot of the guys were like making all their inroads, dominating the game, gone.
Yeah, but it's interesting you say that because with the 3 wins from 3 for the Blues, I actually feel like the Blues still haven't actually put in their best performance yet. They've still got runs in the bank that I don't know whether they're going to be able to pull that out or not, but they're not polished. I think there's a level of polish that's still available there that they need to pull out of their kit bag.
Runs on the board means you've actually already scored them. What you're trying to, there is room for improvement from there with mixed sort of similes, and we have him, the man who actually knows what he's talking about. So we need to get him on before you two spend the next 40 minutes just talking about about this. So, Stephen, how are you doing, sir?
I'm very good, thank you, Paul, and it's a pleasure to be on the show.
Great to have you. So, look, Scott Gregory, a guy from Northland, a guy you know. What happened to him? Did he just obviously a bad day at the office there? Fumbled a couple, got charged down for a try. This isn't the kind of the Scott Gregory we see playing in Cambridge Blue, is it?
You don't want to make excuses for somebody, but I kind of am. If we track Scott Gregory's career, he started at Whangarei Boys as a first 5 and then got pushed out to second 5. And I've actually seen him play his best rugby as a midfielder. And for some reason, all the coaches that are involved with see him as a fullback. This is not the first time I've actually seen Scott have issues with the high ball. I know playing for Northland against Taranaki last year, he had issues. And, it certainly wasn't a night to remember. It pretty much started with the kick ahead, which he probably should have just popped over the sideline as opposed to waiting, picking it up and getting it charged down. Because I think from after that, his confidence just pretty much went out the window, period. And that was it. And another thing is sometimes as coaches, you've got to read the room if a guy's confidence is shot and he's not having a good night. I personally would have subbed him quite early in that second half. Simple as that. And I know Scott really, really well. He's a good kid. Hopefully he can bounce back from this. But more importantly, I just wish coaches would see him as more of a midfielder than I do. Yeah, a midfielder as more than a fullback, guys.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's interesting that you say that, Steve, because he was previously in the Blues squad, a couple of years ago. Then he's obviously quite a big component of the Sevens team. And now he's at the Highlanders. But when he was at the Blues, he was seen as an outside back, the back 3. He was never seen as a midfield back when he was with the Blues either. So it's interesting that I wasn't aware that, he started at first 5 and really a midfielder. So it really does make a lot of sense with what you're saying, is that you're playing a poor kid out of position.
But where does he learn, though? You've got to give the Highlanders a bit of credit, though. I mean, he's got to start somewhere. Maybe he's out of position, whatever but this is how you learn what he's made of, what he's good at, where he excels, where he needs to work on. And, I mean, they gave the guy a stab. And I agree with what you said about how they probably should have pulled him a little bit earlier, but at least they showed their confidence in him to say, look, we're going to give you an hour or whatever he had. Do what you can do. We're going to take what we can from this, and we've got work-ons, and we'll move on from there and progress. I mean, it's good that they gave the guy a shot. I think the Highlanders really were given no chance in this game, and much like in Game 2, the whole competition watching it has been put completely back on their heels about what they thought about who are the best and who are the worst teams in this competition.
Anybody's
Yeah,
the best and anybody's the worst
First half.
in a given day.
The first half went, I guess, pretty much as people were expecting. Let's be honest. The Blues, 93% tackling, which basically meant they didn't give the Highlanders any opportunities in that first half, really, to get over the game line, to make any breaks, to get much. The only try they came away with was a line out maul, and then they bashed it, which got stopped. They bashed it over. I mean, that line out maul, Steve, has been one of the conflict has been one of the key weapons of the Highlanders so far this season, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Ash Dixon's been leading that pack phenomenally well, and they've stepped up quite nicely around him as well. So it's definitely one of their biggest weapons. It's going to be tested more and more as this competition goes on, especially next weekend, massively. But yeah, I mean, it's good that's a team that's always known as not having the greatest pack, but they can get something out of it, and especially against a team that's got such a strong pack like the Blues have, that you would think they may struggle with, although they perform very, very well with it, and they're using it quite nicely and playing to their strengths, which is good to see. And they're getting guys like that back row. Shannon Frizzell, I thought, had the biggest game, although he's only had a couple, but massive improvement for what he's seen from him this year over Super Rugby so far. And his stats, top tackler, none missed. And of course, the big runs he made, he was a presence. He hasn't been a presence this season, pre-COVID, post-COVID at all. And to see that stepping up, I think it's going to make a big, big difference, especially with Makeli Tu'u outside him. Those two could be just a phenomenal force together at 6 and 8. So really good to see that they're using that well.
And also, one of the things this talks about with this Blues team is that we've known Blues teams always have the ability to score flash tries, but it's work rate that we're seeing this time around, isn't it? I mean, Knock covering back after Karifi's great break and kick through. The work rate we're seeing from this Blues team is Kiriwani, again, got through a lot of work these last two games that we haven't seen him do previously. That's really the difference this year, don't you think, Arthur?
Oh, hugely. The fact that this is like get up off the ground and make yourself available to do something, as opposed to stay on the ground and one of my mates will do it for me. The work rate is definitely lifted, and that's all you can basically say about it. And then it's making a difference in the performances, and you saw that obviously in the last 3 minutes when they were under the pump. So that's it. But I actually want to come back to a Highlanders player, and you were talking about their forwards and their work rate. I think the All Blacks are struggling for a number 3 hooker, and you'd have to say that someone like an Ash Dixon really putting his hand up, because he's hitting his jumpers, he's doing the work around the field. I mean, and one of the issues has been with whether it's Liam Coltman or Nathan Harris or whoever has been their line-out throwing, and Ash Dixon has been on the money with that. And, they did lose a couple in the second half when it was a bit crucial. But I think against the Chiefs and then against the Blues, he was accurate. But it's not just in the it's his core job there, but then around the field, he's quite big as well.
He's a leader too. That's the main thing about him. They follow around. He's a guy. Yeah. You see him with Māori All Blacks, what effect he has on that team and how good he is with those guys. He brings that to the Highlanders, that same sort of passion and integrity to the team. So he is massive. And I think any team, would love a guy like him. And he's keeping, like you say, that third choice hooker out of the All Blacks, out of the starting 15. So Coltman, no chance.
Stephen, a player that I want to hear from you about is Caleb Clark. You know his dad, Ronnie Clark. But two tries in that first. He made one try, scored one try in that first half. He's spotting those mismatches, those gaps, and he's got great confidence to go for them, hasn't he, Stephen?
He has, and of course it was a tough day at the office for the young fellow. Obviously, having lost a grandfather that particular day or earlier in the day. So it was, full credit to the young fella for fronting up. I'm pretty sure his grandfather would have wanted that. But yeah, he's, if you meet him, Caleb, in real life, he's a very big guy, stands over 6 foot. So he's got a lot of size and power to him. So listen, all power to him. He's just going great guns at this point in time. So it's good to see, and I think he might be a tad faster than his dad. I hope his dad isn't watching the show. Hey, not talk to me.
Speaking of speed, this is like there's a few Clark brothers actually. So Caleb's got a couple of younger brothers, and my son ended up playing in a Ripper game against one of the other Clarks, and it's just like you sort of think, oh yeah, you got the fast kids and the slow kids in the team, and then you came up against this team, and it's like, yeah, they had the fast kids and the slow kids, and you gave it to the Clark. I'm sorry, I don't know his first. I can't remember his first name, but that was just a different level of speed, and I was just like, zoom. It's like, yeah, he's gone. See ya. No, they're definitely faster than their dad. I saw that, even at a 5-year-old age.
Looking at some of these things, there's Satutu puts through a wonderful kick. Parsons put through a kick as well. What's with these forwards suddenly at the Blues showing multi-skilled players? It's great to see. I mean, we saw a bunch of on Twitter. There were some great highlights of a certain Mr. Wood who used to kick well for the for Ireland back in the day. The old bald-headed hooker. But yeah, it's good to see these forwards. Putting toe to ball, I think, and doing it effectively as well.
Crickets. Oh, no, absolutely. No, look, I mean, I think the key thing though is that they're not willy-nilly kicking it, right? Hoskins and James Parsons' kicks were calculated kicks, good kicks, and got good results on the back of those kicks as well. So it's not just like, oh, I'm under pressure, we're going backwards, or we're not going anywhere, and I'll put a random kick in. It was like, we're going forward, there's space in behind, and we're utilizing that space in behind. And we've got a good chase onto it as well. Because a kick's only as good as its chase, right? Good cliche. Kick's only as good as its chase.
Cameron also wants to mention Terry Black in there. Yes, he is playing well. There was an article in midweek in the UK, over in UK about Bowden Barrett and how he's allowing others to play. In the fact that he's not jumping into first receiver, he's not trying to run everything back. He is kicking a lot back, and Terry Black is stepping up into that space and doing a lot of the work, but doing it very well. He was doing well previous to lockdown, and I think quite a few of us basically thought that it was going to be a shame that he was going to lose his place to Bowden Barrett when he came back in Outram.
Yep. Oh, look, I mean, I think that was sort of like Bowden will be back and he'll go to first 5 and that, but I think it's been good leadership. That's obviously at the management level where they've basically put Bowden at the back. We actually, with the Blues at 3-0, and Bowden hasn't really done anything game-wise that's been like, he's done some great controlling kicks or, settling down type things. But the big thing that Bowden Barrett's brought to the team is level-headedness on the field, right? Or off the field as well, obviously. But he's talking, and that's the communication out to those young players and saying, okay, no, we need to do this, we need to do that. So that's the big thing that Bowden Barrett's bringing to the field, really, at the moment. He hasn't really done anything too flashy. He's tried a couple of things, but nothing too out there. And he's letting the players that are in front of him be themselves and not trying to take over and be that guy.
Yep. I guess finally we should just say, Hunt also had a decent game. He went over after the forwards, did the hard work for the Highlanders, but he missed a crucial penalty late on that could have evened things up. Also some question marks about whether Stephen here, Cornflake here, they went for a drop goal, then they get the penalty and they go to the corner. Does that make sense? Or should they have kicked the free? That's been one of the sort of key things we've seen on social media getting discussed. We'll get your opinion on that, and then we'll move on to the next game, I think.
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it? They go for the 3, tied up, and probably thought about it and thought, well, let's not try, we'll just win it now. Stuff going to the extra time, the golden point rubbish, just do it all in one foul swoop. I mean, you can't be too critical of it. I'm not. They played well in that second half, and there's a lot of standout guys. And I mentioned it on Twitter at the end of that game. I mean, I don't know, from a Blues perspective, Ashwin, how you feel about how the Blues played on that, whether you're disappointed of how that result eventually happened at the end. But I mean, from a Highlanders perspective, that's a super young team. That's a super fresh team. That's a team that played well within themselves. I think they could have been a lot better in certain areas. I mean, players could have had better games. And in time, next year after that, this could be the same group. The core group's still together. Their potential is way up out of the sky. Whereas I think the Blues at the moment are fairly close to their peak of as far terms of players' performance and in terms of players' career sort of thing. I don't think they've got anywhere near as much as the Highlanders do in terms of where they can improve on this. So I think that is a great performance and a great look for the Highlanders, how they perform, the passion they showed to stay in that game, to stay competitive, to pretty much come within a little sniff of actually stealing it right at the end, and not drop their heads after going down, by 12 points at half time, was fantastic. And I think that it's just going to get better and better. And, all the teams at the moment, underestimate them at your peril, write them off at your peril. They won't give you an inch, no matter who you are, what your name is, or what colour your shirt is, or what number you've got on your back, or what name. It doesn't matter. They ain't giving you anything.
I'll let Steve have right of reply, and then we'll double team him, T. Yeah. Where you go, man.
Go Cornflake. I probably agree with probably about 90% of the stuff that you just mentioned before, because I will say, if the Highlanders had got across the whitewash and won that game, I would not have had any issues with that, because I think in that second half, I think they did really well to fight back to where they came from. With regards to the Blues maybe hitting their peak at the moment, I'm not 100% sure, and I pretty much say that because we know what potential they have got at the back, but I don't think a lot of their guys, the likes of Barrett, he's hardly been in the game thus far. I think he's just directing everything from the back. I disagree with you. I think they've actually got another level, and I think when they come up against the likes of a Crusaders, I think you'll see a very, very special game. I think the Crusaders know the Blues are on the rise, and I think the Blues know that the Crusaders is a team that's got a target on their back. And like you say, on a given day, you underestimate any team at their peril. And we'll talk when we talk about the next game. Any team can come up. And what I do admire about the Highlanders is the fact that if you look at all the personnel that they've actually lost and the guys that have stepped in and stepped up, I do admire that. But on saying that, Hunter had a very good game. But is he going to be consistent? How long is Josh Ioane for out? One question I was going to ask, or two questions, sorry to get away. Mackay, is he out injured? And secondly, I know there's been a little bit of talk about the side entry on the last wall, and I must admit, and I had a good look at it again, and to me it looked a little dodgy. His
yellow card,
his entry,
penalty try.
Hoskins? You're talking about Hoskins? Hoskins' entry? No, but he goes in on the ball. He's come from the try line and he's gone in on the ball. So I don't know. I think it's a 50-50 call on the side entry. What's more in that situation is that the ref called maul and the Blues players went in from all angles to hold him up.
Yeah.
I thought Hoskins was. I thought it was actually the other players when he called maul. That's
what you say. Yeah, all the other players who suddenly come running in, and you're like, hang on, they've not run in from behind their own. Yeah.
Look, there were a couple of 50-50 calls, and I thought they actually evened up through the game, because I think the try that was and there was actually advantage before the try, and Dalton Papali'i was going to be penalised, and it's just like, well, actually that was the same instance or situation where the Bryce Lawrence talked on a sports show on the Sports Channel during the week, where he went over a squeeze ball and was trying to get the ball. And in that scenario from the Chiefs game, they said that Dalton should have not been penalised, and he was actually in the rights, because as long as the squeeze ball is being made, until the ball is made available, he's able to go for it. And that's exactly what happened in that situation. Dalton's gone over the top with a squeeze ball happening, and then the playing advantage should have been a penalty to Dalton.
Anyway.
Sorry, where you go, Paul?
Cut. Next game.
I thought that's what you wanted to do.
Come on. Wait on. One thing. Cameron, I'll give you Hoskins to Tutu, but that's all I'm giving you. Don't come with me with that Aotearoa Black being coming up to the superstar. He's gonna go.
I'm gonna go. It's just like, so Steve's talking about the young players at the Highlanders. It's just like you got a back three off the scrum where Akira's the oldest at 24. Hoskins only 21. So McKelly Tu'u is 23. Then you go in the back line where you've got TJ and Rico in the midfield, and you've got Caleb on one wing, and you've got Mark Talia on the other. So there's plenty of and the halfbacks with Knock now starting to stand up, and Finley, Christie. Geez, that kid's he's a firecracker. But I mean, so there's plenty of young fellas starting to come through and putting their hand up as well.
He'll go back to Scotland. He'll go home.
Yeah. he'll go back to St. Kitts.
So one of the points is that you're going to find that the majority, apart from the Crusaders, who somehow managed to keep people in the country and not be taken across to France and Japan and England, all the other 4 franchises are always going to be young, because as soon as the player gets to the mid-20s, they don't crack the All Blacks. They go overseas. We've seen that with Manu, who's just left the Chiefs. And so all these teams are going to be young. All these teams are going to be like, imagine what they're like in 5 years' time. Well, they'll have left and gone and played in France.
I think the direction of what I was going to make from that point is that the Blues have got, you're right, they've got Rico Ioanis, they've got all those guys, the known players, the guys that are already All Blacks, the Bowden Barretts. Who's the recognisable guy at the Highlanders? Aaron Smith?
Yep.
I mean,
Aaron Smith.
That's it. And I mean, I think he has developed and evolved at the start of the season already. He's actually hitting rucks and tackling players. Aaron Smith goes that way when there's a ruck and a tackle player until it's established that he can get the ball out. If it's defensively, he's out of there. He was actually getting involved. He has grown, I think, into an actual player who's getting involved more and probably forced to because of the way the Highlanders are. But there's no one there. There's potential for there to be a host of superstars in that team. The Blues are at that superstar level, is what I'm trying to say. The Barretts, Ioanis, they've got all those guys that are at that kind of level right now. Yeah, they're still young, but they're kind of at that superstar level, whereas the Highlanders have still got a lot of way to go and potential to have 6 or 8 All Blacks. Maybe.
Yeah, they're at that superstar level, but they're not consistent yet. They've still got to bring consistency to the table, and so that's the thing, and that'll come with age. That won't. The consistency is unfortunately an age-related thing, generally speaking. So I sort of think, I mean, like especially with a Caleb, some of the things that he did on Saturday night were a step up for him. I thought actually he like spotting the gaps and going for them, just having looking up, heads up play, scanning what's open and available to in front of him, as opposed to just tucking the ball and running. Is actually looking to create. So I think that'll come with maturity as well with some of the younger players.
There is also another here. Look, that the Highlanders had something like 16 new players this season. So from a cohesion point of view, they're definitely the least cohesive side out of all the New Zealand Super Rugby sides. A lot of those players we are talking about have been around the Blues setup for a year or two, even if they are still very young and got a long way to go. So there is that element to it. But
I knew my point would get through eventually.
That game, 27-24, it was 22-10 at half time. So great comeback. I think what we've shown there is the grit from the Highlanders, and also the Blues also showed grit to finish it. And that's something we're going to talk about, and I think it's going to become a common theme across all of these sides as well. Coming on then to the Crusaders versus the Chiefs, and boy, I might have got the weather wrong for the first game, but the second game was wet, and I did say it was going to be wet, and that was going to impact the crowd. And boy, it was teeming it down.
I'm sorry. I'm just gonna it's a classic story that we get out of Crusaderland is this the weather conditions are going to impact the crowd, and it's just like Saturday night I think we had 3 tornadoes in Auckland, and we just basically had a drenching all day. And if it hadn't been for those weather conditions, it would have been over 30,000 people there, but we still managed to get 27. This is a successful rugby franchise that can't get people along after a lockdown, I should say. Right? And it's just like, don't make excuses pre-game. This is like your people aren't turning up to the game. I don't think you're allowed to do that anymore, Steve.
No idea what to do. I'm sorry for everybody there. Moving on then.
To the game.
It was wet. As we are already 29 minutes into a half-hour show, my promotion my summation of I'm halfway through the content. My summation of this game is pretty going to be short and sharp. It rained. The Crusaders adapted to the rain. The Chiefs tried to play dry weather football. Didn't look after the pill. They lost. Stephen Harris, since you're not normally allowed to talk, I'll let you go next.
I don't know what to say. I'm reading one of Cameron Pike's comments. I don't know if you're going to post it. He reckons it's good shagging.
No,
no. Cameron,
He doesn't have to.
Cameron,
you just said it.
You can't say that. Yeah, I know. I couldn't. Listen, one thing I will say, having been to that ground, especially during the middle of it, really is cold. And when I talk cold, it does cut through you. And apparently they had good ticket sales down there during the week, but apparently some people just didn't turn up, which is a little bit disappointing to say the least. One thing about this Crusaders team, they do know how to win, and yeah, back to you, Phil.
Like, sweet Ashton, we've got 29 minutes. Let's go.
They do know how to win, but I thought they weren't clinical early on. We basically in the first 9 minutes was it wasn't wet. It was all Crusaders. The Chiefs were pretty passive on the first phase, but then after that, defensively. Then after the first phase, they were very aggressive defensively and stopped the Crusaders on that advantage line. And even when the Crusaders managed to break them down, they still spilled the ball. So I thought that actually early on, the Crusaders weren't clinical in a way that we've expected that we've seen them in the past, either Arsenal or Cornflake. And I'll then just step back.
Oh, look, I mean, I thought that the Chiefs were their own enemies in the game. They had enough ball. I just don't think, as you alluded to it, they didn't play the right tactics for the weather conditions. It's funny because the commentators kept saying every time that Damien McKenzie got the ball, oh, you never know what's going to happen. Oh, he's going to create something. Oh, he's created something. He didn't create anything. The defensive line for the Crusaders is set. So they're not actually manipulating the Crusaders' defensive line at all. They're just going side to side and playing risk rugby when really with those with the weather conditions, they should have been doing what O'Terry Black, Bowden Barrett, Mitch Hunt was doing on Saturday night, was basically kicks into space behind.
Jeez, you've stolen my point straight off me there. That was exactly what I was going to say. I've got a complaint to make, and it's Damien McKenzie. He just stay away from first receiver. Just stay away.
Yes.
Leave it to Cruden. Just pop in and out at second or third from out of there. Don't run sideways because it's a red wall. You're just running sideways and they're just going to get you anyway. He was, I said, the commentators, exactly what you said, drove me nuts. Saying, here he is, he's going to make a big bust here, and then he's on the ground, he's splattered, and then he throws the ball back too. He's so reckless at the breakdown. He doesn't try and nicely sit it back. He just chucks it straight out of there. Tried a lot, as did Cruden, but Cruden was a bit more safer, although he did throw those 50-50 passes a lot, but I thought his running with ball in hand was a lot more dangerous than McKenzie's was. He was just aimless sideways and going nowhere, and I think we've seen this from McKenzie a few times. Remember that first game he played at Fly Half, I think it was against the Lions when they came here, and it was pouring with rain, and he was absolutely terrible. And we're all like, cut the throat on the 10 for McKenzie's idea because it's still going down the toilet. It was like that. It was an instant replay there. I thought he was, no good. Just sit off people. Sit off like a Tapia or a Leonard Brown hitting the line and just go for that little offload off that and use your pace through there. That's what he's best at, and that's what he should try target on. But if Stephen wants to say so he's that side. Go, quick. Chip in.
No, you're right.
Oh, he doesn't. He unmuted his mic. I thought he was ready to go.
You guys are on fire. I'm just listening. I'm actually prepping for the breakfast show. I keep going.
Okay, so look for the first half. Basically, both sides nullified each other. The rain got in the way, and the only time that the Crusaders scored was when essentially a high ball. Dave McKenzie jumped for it, totally misjudged it. Reese collected it, and then because Dave McKenzie had come up to claim the ball, there was no one at home. Reese went up, drew the last tackler, passed the ball, and hey presto, what's his name?
Will Jordan.
Jordan goes in and scores a nice, easy try. And then that's suddenly it's a 10-3. I thought that the Crusaders, with a 5-metre line out, 2 minutes before half time or a minute before half time, I'm thinking this is clearly going to be a try, and then it's game over. But I mean, to be fair to the Chiefs, they showed grit, and they held out. But for a lot of teams would have succumbed to the Crusaders, or the Crusaders have scored in that period just before half time against a lot of teams. They couldn't do it. Couldn't do it tonight.
Yeah, look, I mean, both of the Crusaders' tries actually were sort of, a little bit out of opportunistic. Yeah, they were. I mean, in saying that, they did create the first ball Jordan try. It was a crossfield kick that, as Paul alluded to, that Damien McKenzie. It's from the replay angle on the opposite angle that you see it. He's totally misread that. He never got close to taking that ball. But the other thing that you can see in that defensive structure for the Chiefs was that there was nobody. So I think it was Wainui on that wing hadn't actually dropped to be in a defensive position. That if McKenzie's dropped it, or for something ricochet backwards, there was nobody, no Chiefs back there. Even with Sevu Reece taking that ball, if they actually had somebody that had dropped in behind to protect Damien McKenzie, then they would have taken Sevu Reece out. So there was actually a defensive blunder mistake made, and then the second Will Jordan try, and this has actually been seen on replays. If you go 2 rucks back, there's an out and out penalty to the Chiefs for Jack Goodhue just wrapping himself up in the ruck in a tackle situation. And they argue, unfortunately, and you teach your kids this, look, you play to the whistle, and the Chiefs didn't play to the whistle. They were arguing that point. They're right, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because the refs didn't call it. And off the quick throw in, they went and scored. So 2 opportunistic tries, and that was really the difference in the game.
2 assists.
The Chiefs did have their opportunity.
2 assists by Sevu Reece and 2 tries by Will Jordan. Sevu Reece, I'm not sure we'll ever again do a try assist from a line out throwing. But go Steve.
Just in that movement you were talking about before with the high kick, there's a couple of guys who I thought with their inexperience got exposed in that game. One was Tupaia, the centre, but also Nanai Satura got exposed on a couple of occasions. And with that high kick, if you watch where he was, McKenzie was going into to contest for that high kick. Now he ran forward of that kick. So once Sevu Reece took that kick, if you look behind from the end at the end on camera, there was nobody there. He should have sat in the pocket or sat back. I actually thought when you mentioned Sean Wainui, I actually thought Sean Wainui was one of the better performers in that back line, and actually got better as the game. He's a very direct player. He'll bring the ball back hard. I mean to say he copped a really big shot. Now who was it? Callum Grace might have put a big shot on him, and he just gets up and he comes again. So I just thought in those areas they got a little bit exposed. Those 2 outside back, and Tupaia's got a really big reputation, but he hasn't impressed me at all in his last 2 matches. But on saying that, he is only a young guy.
I think it's disappointing that it's disappointing that Alamala didn't play. I was disappointed by that at the start when he pulled out late, because I'm a big fan of him, and seeing him on the bench last week, I thought, he's finally coming back. He has the X factor that could have made a bit of a difference. Even conditions like they were, I think a little bit of a time and a little bit on the ball, he can make things happen, whether it's rain, hail, or snow. So big disappointment that he wasn't there. But I've been picking holes in this Crusaders team because there's got to be a way to beat them. And at the start of round 2, when you look at the team and say, where can sides look here because they haven't played, I picked holes in their back row. Cullen Grace, like you talked about, and Billy Harmon as well. That Cullen Grace, you watch him, you watch his game. He is a really hard worker, a really, really hard worker. He's a line-out option. He's big. He carries well. He cleans well. He does everything that if you don't watch the game, particularly on a player, you don't really notice what he does because he doesn't do all the flashy stuff. He's not an Akira Ioane that does everything nice and bulldozer. He does the really, really hard stuff. 22 tackles. The next highest was Billy Harmon with 12. and the next highest was Soakula with 10. He made 22. That's just how much he worked, and just the work he does around that team. It's so Crusaders-like. It's so unrewarded from like the media perspective and things like that. But he looks like some talent. And I mean, I thought that could be an area other teams could pick on. But man, if he keeps that sort of form up, yeah, he's going to be another great Crusader.
I'll tell you what, the area that other teams can pick on from the Crusaders, and it's just like, I don't know why for over 20 years they haven't figured this out. And it comes down to what you've just picked out about one player, is that it's their work ethic. They don't give up. They don't lie on the ground and go, I've done my job. They get up and they do their job again and again and again. And when I've done it that many times, they get up again and do it again, right? That's their work ethic. That's the difference between the Super Rugby franchises. Because at the end of the day, the talent at that top level, if you look at it on a player-by-player basis, is pretty level. I mean, obviously, you got your Bowden Barretts and your Richie Moangas for a point, that are the special players. Yeah, Damien McKenzie's got that skill, the X Factor players. You've got those guys. But the majority of them aren't X Factor players. They're very good players. But they're all the same. They're all very good players. You don't get to play in a Super Rugby team for any franchise, even the Blues, in previous years, if you aren't good enough to be at that level. So it's the work ethic that it's all about. And it's 20 years and people haven't figured that out.
And you see a guy like Josh Mackay, I think says what your point is. Superstar at the Crusaders, comes to the Highlanders, and he's not anywhere near as effective, not any worse of a player. Just without that sort of support cast around him, that sort of team around him, he doesn't look as good doing what he would normally do in his normal role. So he has to do more. He has to do other things. That's the thing about it. And I mean, I think that starts at the top. You may call it a little thing, but you see in that coach's box when they do something well, score a try, Scott Robertson, every coach gets the fist bump. Now that is team unity, and that will follow all the way down. They're like brothers, it's that culture. So that they go on and everyone is playing for each other. And I just feel I have to do one as well just to fit in. So that's massive for the Crusaders. And that's how all the teams, that team will play like that. And they'll play for each other more than you probably get that culture. I think the Highlanders have it to a certain degree, but I think that's instilled in the Crusaders culture for decades.
And stereotypically speaking, it's a South Island culture. It really is. You're working. It's something that's come through the years. Back in time, working on the land, working hard, and all that sort of thing, and it flows that culture flowing in through that thing. You're right, because the Highlanders are very much like that as well.
So Callum Grace, 21 tackles, 3 missed, but 21 tackles. 6 carries. The only person who carried more than him was Whitelock with 8, as far as forwards goes. Actually, as far as anyone goes. As far as forward goes. He made 13 metres, and only Cody Taylor with 20 metres made more metres as a forward. So, yeah, Callum Grace, big game there.
I remember this time last year we were talking about Tom Robinson, who had a great start to Super Rugby, and we thought, man, is this guy going to be the next number 6? Right at this point in time, I think Callum Grace may have one hand on that number 6 jersey at the minute. Because
Tom's injured.
Not really. I actually think Callum Grace is. I know Tom is fantastic. I mean, so doesn't miss many tackles, but at this point in time, Callum Grace, I think, is showing. It's just really the way he actually hits and tackles. They're really big, offensive hits on the players. And at the moment, I know everybody's talking about Hoskins Sotutu as a possible All Black number 8. I'm even as a Blues supporter, I'm actually not totally convinced at the minute, because I want to see how the season keeps on going once we get down to the championship rounds. And I'm talking when we start playing Crusaders. He's still doing the same stuff against the Crusaders. Then I might say, yeah, you're in pretty good form at the moment. For all the plaudits that Sotutu is getting, he missed a straight one-on-one tackle last night that needed to be made that resulted in a try. So he's still got work on saying that. Tom Robinson was doing the same thing a year ago, getting caught out down the blind side. But boy, the more I see of this boy Callum Grace, and his form's just not in Super Rugby Aotearoa. It actually started earlier in the season, pre-COVID. We were seeing his form. His game at Eden Park, especially if we think back to that game, he disrupted a lot of the Blues ball in that game.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Actually, if we look at the sides out there, something I was thinking when I was driving back was that the Crusaders probably have got the weakest number 8 at the moment in Fetu Douglas. If you think that,
No, hang on. Back the truck up here. I was going to talk about the Chiefs number 8 and Peter Gus-Sokolo. If you haven't got a blue jersey on, he doesn't play well against you. He plays phenomenal games against the Blues, or Auckland when he's playing for Taranaki. But really, today he didn't get over the advantage line, or didn't feel like he was getting over the advantage line. And for the big guy, that's what you're expecting from him. So I just don't see him getting those performances, the consistency of the performances, basically.
But it's that old adage of second season, though, isn't it?
Oh, he's been around for more than 2 seasons, hasn't he?
No, I mean the rest of them. I mean Sututu and Makeli too. Those sort of guys. This is the first. Like Tom Robinson last year, we were like, oh, all black. But now, you got to really go through 2 full seasons, experience those highs and lows, drop in form, not play well, but still play at a good enough level so your bad game is still a decent game, and your good game.
How to work your way through a bad game when you're not on form, but you still got to perform.
Still do your roles.
Okay. I mean, 16 carries. Okay, he only went 17 meters. So you're right. He wasn't making those busts. I think one of the problems that the Chiefs had in this one was the Chiefs didn't make any clean breaks at all all game.
Well, that's what I referred to back before when I mentioned, they really didn't manipulate things to try and break the line. They were basically like your Damien McKenzie running side to side, thinking that he was going to find a hole in a defensive wall. And Wainui was probably closest to actually, with his work effort, was probably closest to going through.
And it's just some other stats that jumped out at me. So 298 meters running by the Crusaders, 296 by the Chiefs. So pretty much the same, and not very big numbers either, really. With the Crusaders doing that with 78 passes and 76 runs. The Chiefs doing that with 151 passes and 128 runs. So nearly 50 more runs and nearly twice as many passes. The Crusaders, again, adapting to the weather conditions, 41 kicks. That's a lot. A kick every 2 minutes. The Chiefs, only 27. In those 27 is a reasonable amount if it's not wet. But under those conditions, they just played the wrong game.
You'd have to say it's a lack of composure from the Chiefs. You saw composure from the Crusaders. It was a lack of composure from the Chiefs. And when you consider that they have got that experience in key positions with Sam Kane back and Aaron Cruden back, and then you throw in with someone like the Damien McKenzie, who's been around now for long enough to be part of in a Chiefs sense anyway, a part of the leadership group. You've got a good group of people to make good decisions about how the game's going, what they need to change up, but they didn't change the game up enough.
To be fair to the Chiefs, guys, sorry to jump in, Steve, they are very, very short in that middle row. I know there was a still shot there one part, and Sawakula was basically standing beside Mitchell Brown, and they seriously are not a tall middle row. They obviously missed the likes of Allardyce, of Brody Retallick. So, they haven't got guys, and you've got to have that confidence with those guys, especially at line out and set piece. And I think what you're basically finding is your loose forwards are having to do extra carrying, because these guys are so small.
Big guys aren't doing it.
They were getting knocked back on the advantage line. When you've got the likes of Ardron there, you've got Retallick there, these guys carry hard into the contact. But more importantly, you need 2 or 3 tacklers on them. But the Crusaders today, I think these locks, I was watching them every time they carried, and they were either getting taken ridden down straight away, or they were getting hit backwards over the advantage line. Listen, for all the carries that the Chiefs had, they just weren't making really, really good meters or pay dirt meters for their to get their back line underway. Sorry, Stevie.
No, you're no problem. No, speaking of your line out, you got to say the Chiefs line out was better than had been in the first 2 rounds. Certainly, they did start to disrupt. No. They disrupted the Crusaders. Come on, they turned over a couple of lineouts, which they would have no chance of doing in those first couple of rounds. So they were better. I'd said better, not good. They were better.
Defensively, they're better. Attacking wise, Samasoni comes on.
Defensively,
defensively they're better. Attacking lineups. Samasoni comes on. Well, literally, the very first thing he's having to do is to throw a line out. And I'm thinking, oh boy, not only does he not throw it straight, but nobody jumps at all in the entire. You're like, what?
Hey, is that the one that also got called not straight? And it
Yes,
was
yeah.
actually very straight. It was actually very straight. He actually goes into the middle of the line out to grab the ball, and it's just like, you've called it not straight. The Chiefs can't catch a break or a line out.
But he can't. I mean, when no one even jumps, and you can see he walks on, he talks to everybody, he then walks back, and you're like, that's not just the hooker's fault, right? That's it's
communication.
The entire there is just zero.
People are breaking the song.
You can see the lack of faith in it, because a bunch of lineouts on that were 5 meters out, they were adding players like Quinton Tapia and Sean Wainui into the lineout, into like 9 and 10 man lineouts. You're like, what? Really? Okay, here we go.
I missed that actually. I didn't pick that up.
No, they were jumping into the maul, straight into the mauls in the back. Brad Weber was jumping into the mauls and pushing them as well. It was a bit carnage. But I was going to expand on your stats there, Paul. What I found really interesting on the meters gained was that for the Crusaders, Will Jordan made 71. You take out those 2 tries, which are probably about 30 meters each. He only probably made about 10 meters running. Cody Taylor made 23. He made that big bust down off that line out, which was probably 20 meters. So take that off here. No one else made over 20 meters for the Crusaders. The Chiefs had 5 players that went over 20 meters. So that was kind of weird, but it explains what you said more about the kicking game and how the Crusaders played, so I think, to that weather conditions a lot more, rather than just like hammering away at dead wood like they did, and a bit uncreative and trying to force things, I think, a bit, especially although I credit Cruden for the way he played. He forced a lot that really should have just gone to ground with and not carried on with, and they just were a bit aimless, I think, with a lot of the way they went about things. So yeah, didn't play to the right to the conditions, and need a bit more tactical awareness, I think, and communication and faith in their teammates.
Yep. You got different stats to me, but you look at the Chiefs one. Yes, look at the Chiefs one, and you're like, okay, so who are their top meter makers? Dave McKenzie, Sean Wainui, and Nani Satoro. Yeah, it's the back 3. Now, admittedly, they're collecting kicks and running it back to a certain degree, but also it's the back 3, whoever they've selected, whether it's been Sean Stevenson or Solomon Amalo, that back 3 has been where the Chiefs have been dangerous all season, and that's the only in all their games so far. It's not in the middle. It's always been when they get it out wide and give the guys a bit of space. Well, thank you guys. We've obviously gone for twice as long as we should do.
We always do.
Got another hour to go yet, don't we?
Just absolutely quickly, guys. If you were sort of picking a 15 for the weekend, I looked at a couple of names here. I'd go probably Will Jordan at fullback. You all agree?
Oh, yeah.
Yep,
I think that's
okay. Caleb Clark on one wing.
Yep.
For first half.
I would actually. Yeah, but I mean, so he had a pretty good game. I'm looking at guys who didn't make a lot of mistakes. He didn't make a lot of mistakes. I'm actually going to go for Sean Wainui on the other wing.
Yeah, because nobody else stands out. Yeah, totally.
No, maybe honourable mention, but that's it. Yeah,
honourable mention.
Yeah, gets an honourable mention. But I think Sean Wainui, he didn't make a lot of mistakes in the game. Fielded everything pretty well. I was thinking about the midfield. I think Anton Leonard-Brown probably deserves to be in there. I still think in a Chiefs midfield he looked pretty good. I also like Tompkinson from the Highlanders. I thought he looked pretty good. But just quickly, second 5 centre.
I was going to go. I'd go Tompkinson and Rico.
No, I wouldn't go Rico. I wouldn't have him there. I thought he made a real crucial error from turnover ball with about 8 minutes to go. I wrote it down. Turnover ball. He needed to move the ball, but he picked and went. Now, from turnover ball, you've got no cleaners there, and he conceded a penalty
because he got isolated.
Which got isolated, which gave the Highlanders that opportunity. So I do wonder if he still does the right things. I'd either go Anton Leonard-Brown or Goodhue. Just in terms of first 5s to me. Well, I think there's a few there that you could either go Moanga Black or maybe even our boy from the Highlanders. So who do you think there? Maybe Richie?
I suppose at the end of the day, I think he's the one that controlled the game for the Crusaders. So, because as you said, the stats show they really didn't do a hell of a lot. So he just got them into the right parts of the park and controlled the game. So you'd probably go Richie.
And I'd go Aaron Smith at halfback. We'd all agree with that.
Yep.
Yeah, classic. Into your number 8. If you look around at those number 8s, did Mickey Ely 2 play 2 for the Highlanders?
Definitely.
I'm actually going to go for Mickey Ely 2 over Hoskins Satutu. We all good with that? 7 and 6. I'll go.
You got democracy.
I got Callum. I'll go Callum Grace at 6. I think that's an easy pick, guys.
Yeah.
What about in terms of 7?
Dalton.
Yep.
Dalton Papali. Yep, go with that. Your two locks. I think I'd go for Patrick Tui Peloto. I thought he went pretty well. Another lock who played pretty well.
I think that obviously the Chiefs don't have any locks, but if you actually go through the 6 other locks, they all actually perform pretty well.
No, Josh Dixon.
Josh Dixon, actually,
he was extraordinary in the lineup.
Yeah, no, actually, I'd go with that. I'd go with that, actually.
I'd go with that. We'll quickly go to hooker.
Dixon.
Oh, Ash Dixon. Yeah. After my rant about Ash Dixon, I have to go with him, don't I?
Great choice. Tight head props, guys.
Oh,
did Nepo Lalala do enough in the game this afternoon for the Chiefs, or
pretty
did
well
they
in the scrums?
Offa Tuangafasi put in a decent sort of hit, but my only issue with Offa, you don't really see him carrying the ball. So
no, I was going to say that about all the props, Steve. Is that I'm not actually seeing any they're not really that dynamic.
Well, that's why
are at the moment.
That's why I've decided to go with Siati Tukalahi as my tight head prop. I thought he did really well, and the Highlanders scrum stood up really well. And finally, a loose head prop.
I'd probably go Aotearoa. That's fine.
You're going to go who?
Aotearoa.
Oh, Aotearoa.
Yeah, you got through a bunch of work defensively.
Okay, and loose head prop.
Moody was good in the scrums, so he did pretty well in there for the Crusaders. He made pretty short work of Lala through that.
I'm actually going to go for Hodgman. I'm going to go for Hodgman at the Blues, and that's my 15 super Aotearoa Super Rugby 15 of the weekend.
Super Rugby Aotearoa.
Round 3, yeah.
I think the best player off the bench was probably Havili.
But are you gonna replace Jordan with Havili coming off the bench? I still think Jordan. I think you're still going to Jordan. His aerial diffusing of bombs is just magical at the moment.
Oh yeah.
Flawless.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, folks. You've been listening to New Zealand Sports Radio. Don't forget, you can listen to us on the go on your favourite podcatcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Acast, all that kind of stuff. And you're going to want to watch it you want to listen to it on the go rather than watch it sit down for a whole hour, to be honest with you, because I didn't change cameras much. I should have done much more camera changing. Sorry, folks. But yes, do listen to us on the podcast. And we'll be back tomorrow night with the Driving More Show, where we'll be discussing all sorts of rugby related stuff. And I've gone blank. Oh yeah, things like eligibility for North-South games will definitely be a good one. And we have a Samoan scrum half to come on. Stephen Harris, please give
the pronunciation.
Dwayne. Okay, fine, Dwayne, and I've gone blank as to his surname. Sorry. I've not got it up. Will be joining us tomorrow night to give us some professional rugby insights, and no doubt we'll talk about some of the club action as well.